Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have Alexis Kirke. He's a senior research fellow, part of the School of Humanities and Performing Arts at University of Plymouth in England. And we're going to talk about AI and filmmaking and how the two are intersecting. So, Alexis, thanks for coming.
My pleasure, Richard.
How long have you been looking at and considering and possibly using AI? Is it a new thing for you, or how did you first get involved in it?
Well, it's always been my thing, really. Many years ago, I've actually done 2 PhDs, and my first PhD was in the genesis of neural networks. It was back in the old days before deep learning, but it was still very much artificial intelligence and AI. And then I've kind of kept my hand in with it over the years, doing more of it and less of it. But I've come back to it again and again. And obviously I've had a lot of my work with film has involved artificial intelligence.
So, how is AI being used in films right now? Whether people know or not, I'm sure it's being used in ways they do know and don't know. But like when you look at films that have recently come out, well, I guess nothing this year, but probably last year. What roles is AI taking? What's it doing?
Well, it's kind of the whole phrase AI could have a number of meanings. You see, to me, for example, I think the ever-present visual effects industry is utilizing great kind of natural computer intelligence to do what it does. These rendering tools enable things such as the Marvel movies, these franchises. They're all based on some very powerful modeling tools of the natural world and of how objects interact. And they have a great deal of what I would think of as a physical intelligence, intelligent physical modeling and so forth. So I think one of the biggest ways in which intelligent computing has infected movies, if you like, has been through visual effects.
I've seen, the hybrid appearance of people, like in Star Wars, some of the original actors that are no longer around, they used, computer imagery to, project their face onto a body, and it kind of looked like them. I'm sure it's going to get better with time. And then there's these, these hybrid movies now where they're not quite cartoon. They're not, real actors, but the real actors make the movements, and it's kind of like for lack of a better word, a cartoon that displays them, but they're not actually like a flesh and blood person. And then the interface between the two is becoming more prevalent.
Well, you're touching on, I think what you've touched on there is that we don't really know what we mean when we say artificial intelligence. We have these kind of images of it and cliches of it, but the truth is our interaction with intelligent humans, it's not all about logic circuits in the brain. When we process data when talking to another human being, we're taking in all of their emotional movements in their face. So in a sense, what happens at the end of the movie where Princess Leia comes back to life not where she comes back in from space, but where she's actually recreated, that is a contribution to artificial intelligence, because it's really, I think we sometimes do confuse our old electronic circuits with the really very flesh and blood humanistic way that we ourselves compute and interact as beings.
Yeah, maybe AI instead of artificial intelligence, it really should be augmented intelligence, because that's what its role seems to be, is it augments human ability and human interaction in different ways.
Definitely. And I think, researchers are recognizing this very much. And well, one of the things that I heard about in the last few years was obviously IBM's Deep Blue beat the Grandmaster Kasparov many years ago now. But what people like Kasparov are now doing is they're trying to learn new ways of playing chess where they collaborate with machines. and it raises chess to a whole new level. And I think it's really that there is a future, because there are so many areas where machines can't quite cut it. I mean, they can't really walk. One of the most basic things that, if you like, able-bodied people take for granted is just being able to walk. Machines don't have the physical intelligence to walk. They don't have the physical intelligence to hold a conversation. I mean, I wouldn't suggest we do this, but you and I could probably multitask right now. If you really wanted to, you could look at your phone and start browsing your emails. I could call my dog in and start patting my dog and stroking my dog, and we could still continue a coherent conversation. A machine can't really converse properly, even when it puts all of its powers into doing that. So there's a lot that these things can't quite do. They're nearly there, but they can't quite do it. So, of course, the natural thing is, how can we collaborate to make them more powerful and us more powerful at the same time?
Well, yeah, they're also idiot savants, so a computer that can, beat me in chess, if I ask it to do the dishes, it won't even begin, because it just has zero ability to do anything in that regard. So I guess, I don't know the industry, I'm not in it, but I just see them as, in order to get any successful AI beyond like the most narrowest application, you would need to string together a whole bunch of different AIs and kind of piece them together to accomplish something. But even then, it requires like orchestration by a person. There's just these, there's ability within AI, but it just seems to be incredibly narrow, and it still needs a person who's, I guess, can integrate all these different abilities.
Yeah, 100%. It's there is this, been around for a few years now, is the idea of generalized AI. I think people have recognized the difference between sort of a task-specific artificial intelligence and this more generalized idea. But the thing is, I don't think we really understand what human intelligence is. We don't fully understand our own brains. We don't understand our own psychology. I think that the advent of computers, which, God, so many decades ago now, it's given us this way of thinking about information processing that may have absolutely nothing to do with the roots of human intelligence. It may just be one useful model of information processing that we've applied in many different ways. But human intelligence is related to our emotions. It's related to our social interactions. It's not an abstract machine.
So in the movies, in film, where is AI being used most commonly that you see, and where do you like to use it? What are you experimenting with?
Well, I think the area that the two areas, I guess, that I find most exciting both relate to story, and it's one of the biggest challenges is coming up with good stories, and also giving machines control of story. Now, in one sense, this is a ridiculous idea, because talk about generalized AI, story is one of the most human things possible. It's where the reason we can lose ourselves in a movie is because, in essence, movies tell our lives. What's the classic thing they teach you in screenwriting lectures is like, a person meets an obstacle, they overcome the obstacle, and they change. Well, that's pretty much a description of someone living their life, having a midlife crisis, kind of dealing with the whole issue of life, and then going on and dying as such. Story is the most human thing, and for stories to come alive for us, we have to really believe in the humanity of the characters in those stories. So you may think, well, how on earth can AI contribute to this? But then there's something also very suggestive going on at the moment, which is, I've been involved in algorithmic composition, and music is slowly being broken down by machines into smaller and smaller parts. So, for example, there was a time, I don't know how old you are, but I'm old enough to remember the albums and albums in a form where all the tracks were fixed together, and you had to buy the album to get the tracks that were on it. And then that got broken down, first by Napster, and then all the things that came out of it, and currently things like Spotify, where the albums are broken down into tracks. Now, there have been, for many years, there have been music services that if you want to make a corporate video or just use music for some small scale TV program, you can buy the bits that make up a piece of background music and you can put them together in the way you want. So what's happened is that music technology has broken things down from kind of these albums into the very slices, the jigsaw pieces of music. And this is the way that researchers are moving with, for example, with television and film. You know, we had the situation where if you wanted to watch a TV show, you had to watch a whole channel, a network channel, and you had to wait. You had to wait until the thing you wanted came on. And then now it's got to the situation with streamers where you don't have to do that. They've broken that channel down into the programs. And there is research at, for example, the BBC, where they're breaking down the programs into the objects that make up that program. So the visual elements, the different soundtrack elements, the different audio elements. And they're developing technology to allow those elements to be put back together with user preferences once it reaches the television or the laptop.
What do you mean? What's an example of that?
Well, an example that recently I spoke at a BBC event, actually, and one of the other researchers there had developed a system, and there's one of the big British network shows is called Casualty. Actually, it's Holby City, I think. I can't. It's one of the big medical shows in the UK, and very, very big audience, very mainstream. And one of the issues that tended to come up for people that had hearing difficulties is you could kind of, how do you adapt a TV program for people with hearing difficulties? It's not as simple as it sounds. You might think, well, I just turn down the music, the soundtrack, so that somebody with a hearing difficulty can just focus on the dialogue. But the truth is, there are different times when non-dialogue story is very important to the plot. There are times when all you want to do is manipulate the emotions during a story. There are times when the background sound is very important. For example, the sound of a heart rate monitor getting faster, cutting out. You don't want to lower that sound. So what they did is they broke down all of the sound objects within an episode of this very popular TV series, and they gave them a narrative importance so that then somebody who wanted to kind of turn down as much of the sound as possible would be able to have an intelligent volume control that, as you lowered the volume control, actually got rid of sounds in inverse proportion to their story importance. So it wouldn't just immediately get rid of all sounds except dialogue. If the music was important, it would keep the music high. If the heart rate monitor was important, it would keep that high. To do this, you can't have someone doing that at Broadcasting House. You know, that needs to be done on somebody's television or on someone's laptop in their home. So those objects, those sound objects, those video objects the program needs to be broken down rather than sent as a monolithic object in broadcast.
Yeah, imagine someone walking, along like a desolate road, and maybe the crunching of the leaves is important, the wind, the clack of their footsteps, that kind of thing, their breathing. And then when they encounter something, now other sounds are more important. It makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah, but the key point about that, you can't have somebody at the broadcast central, if you like, or you can't have somebody in Netflix's servers producing 500 different versions of every program that is specialized to each person. What you have to do is send out one version that is a packet of objects. And then once it's reached the person's laptop, iPhone or TV, it is then adjusted there. So the point is that these story objects we used to receive in one block, there is very serious consideration, and the future is they're going to be broken down. And if we can break down the audio objects, we can break down the scenes. And if we can break down the scenes, we can rearrange the scenes. We can do a Bandersnatch, but not just for Bandersnatch, potentially for every single TV program sent over the internet.
What about alternate endings? I know that's been tried a few times. Is that something that there's a demand for? Or let's say there's certain characters in the show that people like. What about script writers writing or assessing, which characters are the most popular, and then they'll know which ones maybe to spin off into their own series.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
People have made a great deal of money out of releasing 2 versions and multiple versions of Blu-rays and of their film, multiple cuts of their films. You know, as the current philosophy is you create a cut with a certain ending and that's released. And of course, that's as a result. I guess that you want to have the control to a degree, but it's also as a result of how we used to distribute films. And we used to distribute films on these kind of reels of film that couldn't be very easily adjusted. So the whole art form is tied back to this idea of this way, what literally was film and couldn't be simply adjusted. And that has all changed now. And the big debate, the big question is, how do we utilize that? And I mean, we have the technology to have alternate endings. And I mean, I did a film back in 2011, which was it 2013, which had, it was called Many Worlds, and it had 4 possible endings. And these endings were selected by 4 of the audience members, not consciously. It wasn't like Bandersnatch where you press a button. It was that they wore kind of heart rate monitor, brainwave monitor, and these various sensors. And based on the level of stress that was detected, the computer would automatically change the ending to kind of increase stress or lower stress. So we've had the technology to do it. I personally would say it was very much a proof of concept. It wasn't necessarily a huge artistic success, and it's been tried a number of times. I think the big challenge is not the technology. The big challenge is it goes back to this thing. If you can crack storytelling, you've really cracked general AI. Because if you can tell truthful stories with truthful characters using a machine, then your machines pretty much understand humans at that point. You've got, you know, what we already have with visual effects, which is incredibly powerful modeling of the physical world. If you can actually have a machine that can do incredibly powerful modeling of the human mind and emotions, then you have the stories, then you have the power to change story. But I guess the question is, and what fascinates me, how far can we take it? You know, how far can we use our knowledge of story? We know so much about structure. I mean, TV, for example, is immense. TV writing is all about structure. TV writing is immensely collaborative. I mean, I know in the US, you have writers' rooms. We're getting that more and more in the UK now for our TV, and structure is everything. And I was actually talking to my girlfriend recently. One of her favorite shows is The Crown. And it's a great show. It's a great British export. We were talking about, is this what really happened with the British royal family? Did these things really happen? And I was kind of saying to her, well, there's to actually have a TV program I'm not sure, I think The Crown's 45 minutes long per episode. You have to have a turning point. I mean, every 5 to 10 minutes, what's called a turning point. You have to have something emotionally significant happen. It has to kind of be unexpected and yet entirely natural. And it has to spin off the story of the characters involved into pretty much a new direction every 5 to 10 minutes. Now, I'm fairly sure the British royal family did not have a significant turning point that fitted in nicely with the structure. But this is how I know it's a highly fictionalized account, because television structure is so tight and so important on that tiny screen. You have to have character structure. So my question that I ask myself is, you know, how much can we use that? How much can we use the implicit intelligence of systems like these amazing deep learning networks? I mean, it's unbelievable. When I started doing neural networks, it was like, I mean, you had 3 layers of neurons in them, and you were quite impressed with yourself. These new systems, using some of the APIs like Google's TensorFlow API, they've got like dozens of layers of neurons.
Right.
And the training can take days, weeks. The intelligence, the kind of pattern, I mean, you call it intelligence, it's sort of a pattern recognition, a mathematical modeling. But how far can we take that when combined with the tightly structured nature of much of television and to a degree film? and kind of bypass and short circuit the need to fully understand humans to actually create story.
Again, how is this going to manifest in the shows that we watch? What do you think it's going to look like?
One of the simplest things, which it sounds boring, but in fact, I think it would be immensely popular, is you can choose whether your show is 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, or 10 minutes long. How on earth do you take the same story roughly and compress it? That, I think, will be one of the first things. I know the BBC have done experiments with a documentary about a British person who turned out to be a spy, not the famous one, but another one. And they did a documentary, and you could adjust the length of it, and it still made narrative sense. Because generally programs are fixed in length in such a way that the writer and the producer have really fine-tuned it. So one of the first ways...
That's cool. That's like my wife watching Dancing with the Stars and fast forwarding through the commentary and just watching the dances. That's the part she cares about.
See, that's brilliant, because that's such a good, so yeah, you can select whether you want the show with the commentary, just the dances, what elements you want to emphasize. Or you can select which, that's my favorite judge. So if she goes off on a rant, I want to make sure I see that bit, and so forth. These are things that we have the technology to do, but it's trying to work out how to mass deliver it in a way. I don't know how you must be fairly technically proficient to use this sort of podcasting software and stuff. I mean, I don't know your background actually, Richard. You have to forgive me, but I'm sorry. You're pretty technical.
There's different ways you can use it, by the way. So some can be really easy, some can be complicated. So don't let it fool you. Sometimes it's very simple to use.
But I suspect we may well be more technically proficient. So if a bunch of kind of technical options comes up on the TV screen, it may not bowl us over. But for the average viewer, they don't want that. It needs to be more curated.
Well, when you were talking about a show and having it appear at different lengths, all of a sudden I started thinking about the commercials. And if there's a 30-minute show and there's X number of commercials and I choose the 10-minute version, will it still force me to hear a whole bunch of commercials? And now I perceive like, man, this show is just all commercial. I don't want to watch this crap, because even though I chose 10 minutes, it would just be lousy with commercials, because they got to get a certain amount in to monetize it. Unless I pay for the shortened version, maybe that does it. But that's what came to mind when you mentioned it.
Well, that's a very good point. I hadn't actually considered that. There'd have to be, you couldn't have, if you had a 10-minute show, you couldn't have 10 minutes of commercials. There'd need to be some kind of compromise organized for that to work. But I think one of the other areas that's sort of unfortunately has ethical issues is, I was experimenting when I did my film back in 2013. It was analysing viewers' reactions without them knowing. Of course, they did know, because I was attached these sensors to them. But in a sense, if they were immersed in the film, they didn't know when the cuts were happening and why. Now, my laptop, for example, has a webcam on top. Now, suppose I'm watching something on, on Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever, and it notices that this particular thing, I'm looking to my phone a lot and looking on my phone, and I'm not so interested, or I'm chatting to somebody sitting beside me, or my eyes are wandering. It learns something about what parts of TV programs I like and what types of TV programs I like. Suppose that it notices I'm watching a particular part or type of TV program absolutely intently. There's really good facial recognition and eye gaze recognition being developed at the moment. And there's the potential there, if you're sent a program as a bunch of objects that can be remixed and moved around, you could start running experiments with people in the nicest possible way, in a little way like Facebook ran those experiments of emotional manipulation. You could try and learn the sort of emotional arc that people want in a program. You could, if they were watching a program and they just seemed inattentive or they weren't emotionally reactive, you could move one of the more emotional bits to the point where they're getting bored. Obviously there are creative issues with how you do this, but the potential is there.
I guess you could wake them up if they're becoming inattentive, and put something in there that you have a reserve of story elements that you could drop in there, depending on if a person wants something to be like a horror movie, you can have it where it's like incredibly scary, somewhat scary, more of a thriller. I guess you could tailor different types of movies and genres to how people want. Do you want something to be like a complete tearjerker, or something just kind of a little bit sad? And you can, like, you're talking about doing it without the watcher knowing. But if they knew, it might be different.
Yeah, well, not without them knowing, but without them being forced to consciously make choices. This is something that I wrote an article about this that kind of some people agree with, some disagreed with. And just to get conversation going, I said, this is why interactive film will never happen, was kind of the title of the article. It was something like that. Because when I watch TV, most of the time, I just want to be utterly compelled to watch and to keep watching. If I have to pause it for a comfort break or to go and get a glass of water, I want to not want to pause it. I want to only pause it by necessity. So the last thing I want to do is every 10 minutes or at certain decision points have to use my remote control or phone or mouse pad to tell it what I want next and what I feel like next. And this is where I think the power, you can make people aware you're doing it in the sense of, say, this is an adaptive TV program. It will change depending on how it picks up your responses, but you don't have to bloody do it when they're watching it. And I think that's a key thing. And I think a lot of people have maybe, Bandersnatch maybe hasn't, I think Bandersnatch is a great achievement technically and artistically, but one of the ways they made it work was they made it super meta. It was so meta. It was a film about itself and about Netflix. And sorry about the spoilers for anyone that's not seen it. And because of that weird scorpion's tail, or whatever you want to call it, curling around on itself, it kind of worked artistically. But in general, that approach to film audience interaction is just not a winner. It's not the way to go. In fact, the video games are interactive in very different ways, and they're very different forms of story than television or film. And if we want to make film and television adapt to its audience in real time, we've got to think in very different ways to how we think about video games.
Yeah, I wonder if you can probably take lessons from live entertainment. Let's say a concert, people may clamor for an encore. What if you have them do the same thing in a movie? If they have the ability to ask for an encore, more material right then and there. You can charge them for it and stuff, but that'd be pretty cool. Or I don't know. Or if they want to change the direction of a story.
I've given talks before, and when there've been sections where they've gone well, I can see the audience focusing, and I kind of follow the line that I'm going down. And then I notice, maybe the audience getting a bit more restless. And I think at some level in my mind, I'm multitasking during the talk and thinking, how can I recapture? How can I continue to give the information I need to give, but recapture their interest? So I think as human beings, we do. And when we tell stories to our kids or to each other, we will interact and adapt depending on the reactions of the observer. It's just obviously a little more of a task when you're spending $1 million an episode or, $400 million a film. It becomes a much greater task and a much greater risk. And when you've got a mass market of viewers, you have to have equipment that is understandable and meaningful and can be distributed to the mass market.
What I realized, I guess they do this a little bit, but if you have a series that goes over a period of weeks, do they have trailers for it? And could you use AI to generate things that may not happen, but I don't know, could happen, and make that into a trailer that would interest people?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting idea. Some of the stuff you're saying, what's interesting is maybe because this isn't your specialist area, or you're like coming up with some quite interesting ideas actually. And the thought of trailers having a dual purpose, not only to make people watch, but to kind of find out what they might want to watch as part of what they're going to watch. I don't see any reason why that couldn't be done.
Yeah.
You could look at where their eyes, you can take this to the nth degree, really. If you know the size of the screen that a person is viewing, or even if you can work out relative eye movements, you can watch who are they focusing on? Because at any point, what's showing on this screen, the position of all the characters on the screen. So you can even see which characters they're focusing on. And this gives you,
Well,
so if they're always looking at Mrs. X, then maybe you need a bit more of Mrs. X in the next season.
Yeah. What do you see that there's going to be a movement to replace actors with these, like, I guess, half computer versions of them? These like stylized versions of them that's appeared in some movies.
See, it's funny because this is where it touches on my own personal preferences. I think in my heart, I know that that's going to be a movement. But because of my age and kind of the history of film that I was raised in, I miss the old-fashioned idea of the physical human actor. And I like the idea, but it just feels so inevitable. At the moment, we have these poor actors. Well, I guess a lot of them are used to it now, but some of the older actors, I know Ian McKellan complained. He was almost in tears after the first day of filming on the first Hobbit film, because he was just on his own with green screens. So at the moment, so much of filming is like either an actor on their own or a group of actors who are meant to be, running across a windswept plain while giant spaceships zoom across them and the sky burns with fire. But to them, right, they're just in this aircraft hangar-like construction with green around them and bouncy mats that they have to jump on with elastic tied to their waists. And it's it doesn't take, after seeing things like the Princess Leia facial animation, and the Governor Tarkin facial animation, I just think it is inevitable that we are going to have more and more virtual actors, potentially. I mean, if we want to let our imaginations, and I think one of the reasons I haven't let my imagination run free on this is because I have favorite actors, especially from my kind of teenage formative years, and I love the idea of the human actor. But if I'm going to let my imagination run free, humans could become just placeholders that are then the actual virtual actor is put on them in post-production. So you do have humans in films, but no one cares who the humans are as long as they're approximately.
Oh, you mean they're like people in films now become body doubles, and then you put on whatever face that people might like to see.
Yeah. This seems inevitable. I kind of feel sometimes that Hollywood. I hate the word Hollywood, but the film industry, let's say the international film industry, the big budget international film industry, I kind of think sometimes they don't want to reveal everything that's possible, because what they like to do when there's an event film is just reveal the innovations in that film. So it's almost like they don't want to, as a scientist, technologist, and an artist, I will tend to enjoy riffing on the great ideas and the possibilities in the film industry. But I think the industry itself, when there's a large amount of money involved, you don't want to prefigure. You just want to release the film that uses the cool VFX, that uses the virtual actor, and you just promote that idea in relation to that film, because the film's so bloody expensive and it's so hard getting people to come to the cinemas nowadays. So I think actually, if you sat down some of the people from Industrial Light and Magic, and they'd probably, a lot of this stuff, they'd be like, yeah, that's already happening. Yeah, that's easy. Yeah, we've got software that does that. I mean, ILM and places like that, they've created these applications that are reality creators, person creators, and mapping one person's face onto another. These are all problems that in one sense have been solved, and now it's a case of making them more and more realistic, because I think we all could see that Tarkin and Leia looked a bit uncanny, as they say.
They didn't look right at all. Yeah,
it's just going to be a case of iterations to make it better. But look at what happened to the computer industry through iterations. We started those iterations however many decades ago, and just through iterative development, we've now got a billion moon modules in our phones or something. I don't know, but the increase in computing power has been ridiculous. So if you map that onto the increase in reality simulation power, we're going to be going a long way. The PS5.
In a movie, you could have, it wouldn't really matter who you'd save money, let's say, on the extras. You'd save money on any of the characters that are not the major one. And then you could spend all that money just on the major character. I mean, you could even have a movie where, again, you'd save tons of money on the scenery and all the characters except like maybe the major one or two. And you could even offer the movie where you have a couple different people that could play the major characters, and the person can choose if they like a certain actor instead of another one. They have that one be the major character, and they swap out the face on top of the body that's moving and doing all the things. And maybe they put voice in too. Maybe when voice gets to that point where they can, make a profile of someone's voice and have them voice a character. I mean, then you really can make movies in the way people might want them. They might not like this person as the main. They may like someone else that they favor, let's say.
Yeah, we're now touching on, I mean, yeah, they can profile people's voices. So you can kind of, there's software even I can get for my laptop that you can record a certain amount of a voice, and then you can get it to say new words.
What if there was a movie that people really liked the story, and people in the US wanted certain actors, and then people in the UK wanted popular UK actors, and people in India would want to watch it, but they want popular Indian characters to do the main role. Then the same story can serve a whole bunch of different countries and cultures, and people can get it in the way they want it, and they'll feel like it's their story, their people.
Yeah, that certainly is. I mean, I don't think I've ever gone into the virtual actor discussion as deeply as I'm going into it with you, for the reasons I said earlier. But there are elements against it. I mean, one of the elements against it is people, we like stars. And what I mean by that, we're kind of evolved from this idea of this ape-like, or the simplest societies. Looking at our evolutionary cousins, you had the animals that are higher in the hierarchy, and all the other animals want to be physically near to them. And in a sense, we've recreated that in very large societies because you can't all see the king ape. We can't all go up and touch the king ape's arm in a large modern society. We can, however, see them on TV. We can hear them interviewed. We can learn all about them. We can see them at work. We can watch them on large screens. So in a sense, there is a kind of tipping point where you're thinking, would we rather see a human? Would we rather see the one of these people that we worship, the stars, if you like, the modern prophets, whatever you want to call them? Maybe that's something that will hold us back from going fully virtual. Or, maybe we'd love the idea of virtual stars we can chat with. We can chat with the actual star if they're virtual.
Yeah, I've seen some of that where they'll create like an avatar, and they'll interact with the avatar, and it's programmed to be just like the actor, supposedly. And I don't know how well that'll go over, but I guess if you suspend your disbelief, I guess it can be pretty powerful.
Well, vision is everything. We are totally swept up by vision. It takes a great deal of mental and training to not be utterly swamped by powerful visual imagery. So if you can trick people, if you can make people experience vision in a sufficiently kind of immersive 3D way, it's very, even though their conscious minds might say this isn't real or this person isn't real, if there are enough cues that tap into the subconscious, we almost don't have a choice but to be affected by it.
Yeah, that's true. Well, lots of possibilities. I guess we're kind of at the end of time. What's the best way for people to find out more about the things you're talking about, to see your work, to experience films that have some of these innovations in them? Where can they go? If
I have a website, alexiskirke.com. It's ALEXISKIRKE.com. If you search on medium.com for interactive movies, there's an article I wrote that has information about the background for a lot of interactive movies, whether they be, you have to press a button or you don't have to press a button. I mean, those are the two that spring to mind. A simple Google search on AI and storytelling can be quite, will bring you links towards to a number of short films whose scripts have been kind of developed by AIs or neural networks and so forth. So those are some of the most obvious ways to look at it.
Okay. Yeah, well, very good. Alexis, thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's great to talk about it and dig a bit deeper on some of this stuff.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.